All right, everybody, welcome to another edition of the Industry in Transition podcast. We're very lucky to have Marc Cohen today from LPL. Now, Marc, again, I have to look up your title. It's SVP of Strategic Business Development, so of LPL. So thanks for being here.
Thanks, Tony. It's a pleasure to join you.
Good. Well, we're going to solve all the world's problems today, Marc. So let's think about our business. And these are unprecedented times. You and I were talking a little bit about this last week, that no one's really had to manage in a pandemic and volatile markets and social unrest and with a divisive election coming up. And what I want to talk about a little bit of, just in the beginning, kind of set the table. I've been asking every CEO about this, and people, all senior people at different firms. How's LPL faring through this, and what are you guys, taking away from it, and what are you thinking are sort of the pieces that are going to stick with us as we go forward?
Well, Tony, I think you're spot on. This is clearly a unique time for everybody, and the confluence of events that we've seen, where you've got the political, you've got the economic, you've got the health and the social and the really personal aspects of what we've experienced through the course of this year, brings together an experience that I don't think anybody in our community possibly could have said that they've experienced all at one time. And so it's really been something that everyone has had to very much focus on. How do they pull through, and how do they make the most of the opportunity that's available to them? And I think that our business is no different than that. So if you take a look at over the course of this year, we've been in the midst of the heart of the pandemic for 7 months or so at this point. And at LPL, things could not have been any better. We've leveraged the scale that we bring, the advisor base that we support, and the true capabilities of LPL, the strength that we came into this environment with, to be able to help accelerate where we are today and what we've been able to accomplish over the course of the last several months. We've hit record recruiting quarters, 2 quarters in a row now, and are in a position where.
How does that work? How's the recruiting working now with all this new stuff? We're doing it all remotely. We're having record recruiting, but as I'm sure you were the handshake guy. You're out there all the time, staying in front of people, staying over their houses, doing whatever you can. How is it? Obviously sounds like it hasn't impacted, but how has it changed what you do and what you're seeing now?
It's definitely unique, and I think that everybody has to shift, right? It's not just how does a firm like LPL shift how they integrate with our clients or our prospective clients, but it's also how do the advisors interact with their clients and their prospective clients as well. And so obviously leveraging a lot more digital tools. So these types of conversations where, Tony, I'm sure we would have in the past been able to sit across and break bread together. Here we're talking over Zoom instead in our respective homes. Same type of thing is existing in the recruiting environment and how we're serving our clients as well. I think the unique aspect is leveraging the digital tools to be able to make that process more effective. So if you think of a couple of examples there, on the recruiting side, I think leveraging the strength that LPL has brought to the table and some of the additional capabilities that we've made available to our advisors during this time, including expanding upon their ability to be able to operate their business. So scheduling and whatnot that they can utilize in a digital way to be able to drive some automation into their tools. Our team is using as well, but advisors are also taking notice. And I think that one of the key areas that advisors are recognizing that has allowed LPL to be able to thrive in this time is the stability that we've brought forth, but also the independence that we offer. So when you think of captive employee advisors at wirehouses or at regionals, they're realizing today, I don't need the support of the large firm. I don't need that corner office anymore because I've been able to operate successfully without it. With others, they're able to transition effectively utilizing e-signature and other digital capabilities where they don't have to sit across their clients in the kitchen. They can use DocuSign and other e-signature capabilities to be able to do that effectively.
Is that where you're seeing some of the growth from these wirehouse folks that are? Because look, that's the natural conclusion, right? I'm in a wirehouse and they tell me, I need to be in an office to make this work. All of a sudden it's working pretty well from home. And so now, is that where you're seeing a lot of the new growth or the record recruiting months? Are they coming from the wires?
I think there's a couple of angles. So we're seeing a lot of activity coming out of the wires and other employee firms. We're also seeing a lot of activity. We continue to see activity from other independent firms where the stability and the capabilities of LPL, the technology that we bring forth, the capital that we're able to make available to our advisors to be able to help grow their business and other capabilities that we make available to them is something that a lot of other firms are not able to. And so advisors are seeking ways that where today they can help accelerate their own growth and take advantage of the opportunity that's made available to them. They're recognizing that they may not have the right partner to be able to achieve all that they want to, and they're seeking a partner who brings scale to the table that can help them with those capabilities.
So I like what you're talking about capital, because as you know, I've run a couple of RIAs, started a few of them. If an RIA, comes and says, I want to work with LPL, and they want to grow their business, they want to, not only just from a succession standpoint, but also just from a sustainability standpoint, I want to keep growing, so they can access LPL's balance sheet a little bit for growth. They can find firms to buy, that kind of thing, and you'll help them.
Yeah, absolutely. And we're leaning in a really material way there, and it continues to expand. So as an independent practice, they, of course, have the ability to go out and find who the appropriate capital partner is. If they want to find a private loan or find some other means of sourcing capital, they're welcome to. But LPL is certainly one of those options, and increasingly so among those advisors, where they can certainly leverage our balance sheet, take a loan from LPL to be able to support, whether it's recruiting, M&A, or simply operating capital for their business. But we're also assisting them with some of the operations aspects of that. So when you think of M&A activity, we're doing an increased amount of sourcing opportunities for those advisors who are looking to be able to grow inorganically. We're then helping them with thinking through deal structure, valuation, constructing what that looks like to be able to make that deal successful. And then how do we actually integrate that practice? A lot of people forget that one of the most important parts of the deal is not actually getting the signature, but it's how successful are you at pulling that through. And so our team has spent a lot of time on figuring out how do we operationally support those advisors, bringing those practices together culturally as well as operations-wise.
Yeah, that's exactly what I wish I would have had when I was starting my RIAs. There was not that kind of support, but I imagine it makes it a lot easier, when you do. So some of the stuff you were talking about, and something I talk about all the time with people is, hey, we've come through this COVID, we have all these tech stuff. This was like a real, this was a almost, if you had gone back to LPL and say, hey guys, let's just have everybody work from home for 6 months. Let's see how it works out. They would have thrown you out of the building. But now you have this sort of field test of all your technology, and it's obviously working, pretty well. So what part of that are you going to take going forward? In other words, what lessons have you learned that, hey, maybe we don't need so much real estate, or maybe we don't need so much of this, or maybe we can do so much more remotely? I'll tell you my opinion after I hear from you. What do you think we're going to keep, especially with your job, which is development, is recruiting? Are we ever going to go back to having dinners and holding hands and singing Kumbaya and all that stuff? Or what's going to happen?
I think we will, but I think it would also be naive to think that the world's going to be the same as it was. You hear everyone talking about the new normal, and we'll have to figure out what the new normal is. And I certainly think that the new normal will include breaking bread and having dinners and in-person meetings. And I can't wait for that opportunity with you at the appropriate time. But I think that there will certainly be some changes where you don't necessarily have to rely on that as much. I think we've learned and accelerated our learning over the course of the last several months into how to build relationships and how to deepen the trust in those relationships remotely, so that you're able to develop business, you're able to conduct those relationships, and you're able to empower your business on a remote basis. But I also think, listen, I'm a little old school. I also think that there's nothing that compares with being able to walk and shake someone's hand and be able to look them in the eye, truly, not only through a screen, and be able to build up that relationship. I'm sure there's a lot of advisors that see the same. What I tell you from an office space standpoint is that we're helping launch a lot of firms today, and we're also thinking about this ourselves. So I can look at it from both angles, both the advisor's angle as well as LPL as an enterprise. And I think in all cases, we need to be thinking through a lot more. What does that look like? I think from an LPL standpoint first, we're definitely eager to be able to expand our footprint and no longer be just a campus-based firm, but rather how do we leverage the talent that might be available on a virtual or remote basis, and how do we integrate them in culturally into our organization? So we're thinking through concepts of how do you get that water cooler type talk on a virtual and remote basis, not just actually standing around a water cooler. From an advisor standpoint, what we're seeing is advisors are still pretty intense on taking down office space. I think it's one of the things that they're most proud of in their independent business is what that culture is that they're able to show through their office space, have their own design to that space, and be very proud of it. But the layouts of those spaces are starting to change. You're starting to see advisory practices adopt more open type floor plans where you have the ability to be more dynamic and thoughtful about how you utilize that space, as opposed to constructing walls. And so you can bring clients into a central location. You can have your team operate a little bit more collaboratively, but you also have more flexibility.
I look at it as what this last 7 months has done has created a level of what I call acceptance. There's an acceptance among clients, and the fact that you and I could be sitting here, you don't have a tie on, I'm in my backyard, right? You're in your whatever room that is, right? We haven't established where this is in your house yet, but the fact is that we can all we accept it. If someone was to walk in or your kids, or you have the dog barking like I may have in the background, it's all okay. The third wall has been broken a little bit. So there's a level of acceptance that, in my opinion anyway, we'll have some sort of hybrid, because, we're a people business. We want to be in front of people, and there'll always be a place for offices for advisors. But I think in some ways it's a little easier for a larger firm like LPL than if you think of like the firms that I started. If we had to start during a pandemic, you don't get a lot done. I don't know. I feel like via Zoom, it would be harder because there's no, they meet you, they like you, but they know LPL is a real business. They can look it up. They know it's one of the largest firms in the country. So that makes things a little bit, easier for this acceptance. It's probably harder for these smaller firms that are trying to aggregate and grow, because a lot of it is just the new CEO and the advisor together sort of working it out. And that gives you sort of that level of trust, which maybe you're missing a little bit now. So I'm wondering if you're picking up some of that business too.
So I think you've hit on a really interesting point. There probably is a little bit of a scale that exists there, right? So larger businesses are able to leverage their brand and the scale and kind of the credibility that comes along with that. Newer, smaller businesses need to be able to find other ways to be able to build their credibility. And I think that there is an accuracy to your point that historically, having a nice office space with a boardroom in there and whatnot build some of that credibility as, hey, look, I really am a real business. I'm not just a guy who's working out of my trunk. And so there is a piece of that. But I also think that your point is right in terms of acceptance and the fact that the masses, the whole society has really changed. And so advisors themselves will be able to capitalize on that opportunity as well. And so they don't necessarily need as formal of office space to be able to achieve that. They need more team space. They need to be able to collaborate with their team and oftentimes maybe have a place for their clients to come to. But I think a lot of that will still be able to be done virtually. I mean, at LPL today, you can open 100% of your accounts utilizing electronic means and straight through processing. So that it really is almost instantaneous where your accounts are being opened once the client e-signs a document. So you don't have to go and figure out, how do I sit at someone's table? Your point is, how do we figure out how to get to that conversation of signing documents? How do I build the credibility? And a lot of the way that advisors have organically grown historically is off of word of mouth and referral business. That's not going to change, because the relationships that those advisors have and that they've established for years is what allows them to continue to be successful. That's what's going to allow them to be able to continue to serve their existing client base and also grow a lot of their future or take advantage of their future opportunities as well. It's really that personal interaction. A year or two ago, you and I were having a conversation. I remember it. Sitting in an exhibit hall at a conference about the robo advisors and how they were going to take over, and advisors and the human advisor really wasn't going to be as important anymore, and whether we believed that or not. And I think that there's some aspects of that conversation that we can pull in today too, because there's no difference in the answer I might give you to that conversation, where the human empathy and the intelligence of a human that is able to build the trust and build the relationship with their financial advisory clients is no different than the way that things will work today, where you don't necessarily have that same in-person connectivity.
So this, in my mind, though, with the markets the way they are today, right? Everybody's a genius in a bull market, right? So bad advisors did well. And so, the emperor's got no clothes when the market starts to get, volatile. If you haven't done a good job of, having the connectivity and actually making a plan versus relying on a machine or some, passive investing only, that kind of thing, you're going to be in trouble, because now, anything the last 7 months has showed us is that clients need advice, and that has brought the human element, to the fore. So that's been an enormous, I think, benefit to advice. I know, even though it's been painful, and these things, these corrections and these types of things always are, but that's been a huge boon to the, hey, the old-fashioned advice piece versus a, robo or just a machine.
I agree with you, Tony, and I think the important piece of what you just said there that I'd like to highlight, I think, in our in what we're talking about is it's the relationship. It's not necessarily the performance that matters most in that environment, right? It's not that you're getting some massive returns or that you're seeing a loss at this time. It's more so the relationship, and it's the fact that as an advisor, hopefully you've been able to clearly communicate your strategy with your client. You've been transparent about what your philosophy is and what the principles are that you're managing their accounts to. You've been able to build the trust in that relationship. And that when that advisory client comes back to you and starts knocking on your door saying, whoa, what's going on here? The world is coming to an end in my finances. You're able to then go back and point back to that strategy and those principles and have a very disciplined, pragmatic conversation with them about that. And you don't find yourself into a spot where you haven't talked to that client in years. They're calling you and saying, what's going on here? And you've had to point to performance or to something else because you haven't taken the time to be able to build the relationship on the fundamental aspects of what you're doing for them and build the value that's associated there. I totally agree. That's the most important thing that can be done today.
So it sounds like what we're saying, which, I think there seems to be consensus across, the CEOs I talk to and everybody else, that we're going to take the advisor relationship can remain, the priority going forward. Right. There are other issues that our business has that include, getting young people, diversity, all sorts of things like that in order for us to, grow moving forward. And, I just think it's a challenge, for us because there are fewer and fewer advisors. But as times, we can't predict, the times we live in. You never know. And I think we're on the same page that, a robot's not going to be able to handle this, especially you mentioned empathy, the empathetic part of it,
That's
right? Where you can sort of, relate to somebody because after your health, your money and your family, your money is very important because that's your legacy. So
I think, Tony, what we're starting to see along those lines is because the advisors are being recentered on the importance of the relationship. And let's be honest. I mean, you can change that title, right? Oftentimes, advisors can be considered therapists for their clients. They could take on so many different roles in that relationship. They need to spend an outsized portion of their time focused on those client relationships. Our mission here at LPL, just for what it's worth, I think it's relevant here, is to take care of our advisors so that they can take care of their clients. It's all about how do we enable them to focus more of their time on their clients, and we've been able to do that increasingly this year, and we've seen more advisors taking advantage of capabilities such as our operational support, such as outsourcing risk management to us. We see a lot of advisors who are saying, you know what, I can't spend as much time on managing compliance today as I used to because I need to spend more time with my clients. And so they're looking for ways to be able to outsource more of that. They're figuring out, how do I make better business decisions? And so some of the capabilities that we bring to the table, like our outsourced CFO or marketing support or administrative support services, are increasing in adoption because advisors are looking at what more can I outsource operationally and in terms of running the business so that I'm not finding myself in a spot where I need to focus more of my time on those items that are dragging down the amount of time I can focus on my clients. We're trying to figure out how do we help them focus exclusively on their clients and leave the rest to someone else.
You see that more and more. I just wonder if it's part of a maturation of advisors. They're starting to look at and maybe thinking about the future, whether it's succession or not. But it's looking at this business. Is it sustainable? Is there perpetuity? That's what I have. And it's not going to be if you don't sort of accept help on some of those areas where it's like it's another investment in your firm. You pretty much have to do that if you want to be a long-term player in the business.
100%. I think you'd be far-fetched to find the advisor who said, I got into the advisory business so that I can worry about how do my different technology tools interact with one another. Yeah. It's just not what they're going to say. There's many other reasons that people have gotten into the business of being a financial advisor. But those types of concepts of, I want to answer the SEC's questions, or I want to figure out how my tech works, or I want to check various boxes on forms, is never going to be one of those answers. So how do you focus your time on those things that really make you thrive at what you want to be able to do and what you got into the business to do and what you do well, and let someone else take over some of the other aspects?
Yeah. Well, I think that's in my mind, we've been doing this now 20 something minutes. So I want to find out, is there anything I didn't ask you or that you really wanted to talk about before we go? We like to make this so people, whenever we start commuting again, that people can listen to this on a commute. Although people tell me they listen when they jog and stuff like that. So that's a positive. It's a healthy message. Is there anything else you want?
I hope that we haven't made that person who's jogging trip over themselves with anything that we've said. But I do think that it's been a great conversation. And you're right. We've learned a lot as an industry, right? So we've learned a lot as a society between what we've gone through economically, what we've gone through with the pandemic, what we've gone through with some of the social injustice and the awakening that we've had there, what we're going through now politically. But also as an industry, we've gone through a lot. You've seen a lot of consolidation among some of the major players in the space over the last several weeks and months. You see it shifting in terms of the digitization. And the biggest takeaway I think that we should have for these advisors is to continue, as we've said, do what you do well. It's build those client trusting relationships, increase the number of clients that you can serve effectively and do well, and let others be able to support you in doing that. And for some, that might mean one thing. For others, it might mean something else. But I think taking the time at this point to be able to figure out what is your core competency, what do you love doing, what do you thrive at doing, and allowing other tools, resources, and people, support systems to be able to help with some of the other areas. There's no better time than now to be able to do that.
Yeah, I would agree. I think this is a good time for introspection too. For you're home, you're doing things differently than you were before. You're connecting in a different way. So certainly time to think about some of the larger issues for advisors and make a plan, for 2021. No question.
No doubt.
Hey, thanks for being here, Mark. I really appreciate it. And we'll do this again. We'll come up. I know we have a lot more to talk about, so we'll come up with it again.
I look forward to it. I'm sure we can go on for days.
Yeah, thanks.